Hello. In this video, I want to explain what I found so fascinating about this Tucker Carlson and Putin interview. While they do share the same enemy, Tucker Carlson and Putin, and that same enemy is the Biden administration, and they also see some phenomenon in the world as degenerate. For example, they both dislike gay people and trans people, and generally see leftism as harmful, although they do probably have a different take on the USSR, but I will tell you something about it a bit later. But what's to me fascinating is what answer does Putin give when Tucker asks him, do you think that another president would be more likely to make peace with Russia, unlike Biden? And he's obviously implying Donald Trump. Let's see what Putin answers, and I think that by analyzing that answer, we can learn where are the crucial differences between far-right Russian thinking and far-right American thinking.
Me if another leader comes and changes something. It is not about the leader, it is not about the personality of a particular person. I had a very good relationship with, say, Bush. I know that in the United States, he was portrayed as some kind of a country boy who does not understand much. I assure you that this is not the case. I think he made a lot of mistakes with regard to Russia too. I told you about 2008 and the decision in Bucharest to open the NATO's doors for Ukraine and so on. That happened during his presidency. He actually exercised pressure on the Europeans. But in general, on a personal human level, I had a very good relationship with him. He was no worse than any other American or Russian or European politician. I assure you, he understood what he was doing as well as others. I had such personal relationship with Trump as well. It is not about the personality of the leader, it is about the elite's mindset. If the idea of domination at any cost, based also on forceful actions, dominates the American society, nothing will change. It will only get worse. But if, in the end, one comes to the awareness that the world has been changing due to the objective circumstances, and that one should be able to adapt to them in time, using the advantages that the US still has today, then perhaps something may change.
Okay, what's interesting about this answer is that, in my opinion, Putin actually decided to be honest and say, look, from my perspective, American elites, one could call them the deep state, or however we want to call them, they want to dominate the world. And many Russians actually also believe in this, because they remember that under the years of Yeltsin, after the fall of USSR, Russia was economically exploited by the West. The Western companies used the fact that now Yeltsin opened the Russian market, and they got some pretty profitable concessions on Russian soil. And one of the main reasons why many Russian people actually like Putin is the fact that he ended those concessions and implemented protectionist measures against the West. And the Russians are definitely traumatized by this period of economic exploitation under Yeltsin. I'm referring to the fact that Russian tariffs, were practically non-existent on Western goods, and also the concessions ended by Putin. But yes, in my humble opinion, Putin actually decided to be honest and say no. The Americans, they want world domination. Their elites want world domination, and the Republicans want it, the Democrats want it. Essentially, Putin said something like the line that we can often hear both on the extreme right and left of the United States, that both sides are essentially the same, although far-right people will tell you that Trump is somehow the one that is different. But yes, what's interesting to me is that Putin simply decided to be honest, in my opinion. And okay, now let's analyze: is he right? Do American elites actually want world domination? Well, they want economic domination, surely. There I agree, but what Putin left out is that Russian and Chinese elites also want world domination. And what's to me bizarre is that some far-right people, like Tucker Carlson, refuse to recognize this. They refuse to recognize that at this point in history, there is a battle for world domination between Russia and China on the one side and Europe and America on the other side, and there are even battles within those alliances for power. But if you look at the shadow war in Africa, as they call it, there is a battle for control of the African markets between Russia, China, and the United States, and Europe, of course. So if we recognize this fact now, we can debate about whether or not true peace in the world could have been established after the Cold War, maybe, but that did not happen. Why not? Well, that's a topic for another video. But if we recognize that this battle for domination of the world is happening in Africa, in Asia, all around the world, then it would logically follow that it is in the interest of the United States not to be isolationist and to actually help Ukraine and prevent Russians from conquering Ukrainian oil and some of the most fertile soil in the world, and just conquering a bunch of people and territory. Putin is also hoping to end demographic decline by conquering 8 million people in Ukraine. But yeah, on the one hand, yes, American elites want world domination, but so do the Russian elites. And from that perspective, as as an old American movie said, if you have two toughest gangs on the block, sooner or later they are going to fight for dominance. And that's what's so bizarre to me about this isolationist right that is now appearing in the United States and has already appeared. They pretend as if this battle for domination is not happening and that it somehow isn't in the interest of the United States to protect its allies and by doing so weaken Russia. But okay, let us continue. Now, this is also a fascinating part of the interview. Tucker just asked Putin, how do you reconcile your Christianity with killing people, which is something that all leaders have to do. Let us hear what Putin has to say, and then I will respond.
You know, it's not about external manifestations. It's not about going to church every day or banging your head on the floor. It is in the heart. And our culture is so human-oriented. Dostoevsky, who was very well known in the West and the genius of Russian culture, Russian literature, spoke a lot about this, about the Russian soul. After all, Western society is more pragmatic. Russian people think more about the eternal, about moral values. I don't know, maybe you won't agree with me, but Western culture is more pragmatic after all. I'm not saying this is bad. It makes it possible for today's golden billion to achieve good success in production, even in science and so on. There's nothing wrong with that. I'm just saying that we kind of look the same, but our minds
So
are
do you
built a
see
little
the
different.
supernatural at work as you look out across what's happening in the world now? Do you see God at work? Do you ever think to yourself, these are forces that are not human?
No, to be honest.
Okay, now this this was the funniest part of the interview for me personally, when Tucker asked him, do you see God at work? And Putin just said, Niet. I started to laugh out loud. But okay, what's to me fascinating is Putin is asked a question about what does Christianity mean to him, and he actually started to talk about Dostoevsky, about how he likes Dostoevsky, about the Russian soul, about the Russian heart, and what does this say about Putin? Well, Putin, in his far-right extremism, is much more similar to the old fascism that existed in World War II, that was obsessed with the mystical elements, with the soul, with the heart. Hitler and Mussolini also spoke in this mystical way. Hitler once famously said to his followers, to the crowd that was listening to him, "I am in you and you are in me," and it was never fully explained what he meant. And Putin, I think, also sees the Russian soul as this almost metaphysical entity that exists in some way, while yes, Trump, on the other hand, is, well, first of all, I don't think that Trump knows actually who Dostoevsky is, but other than that, the far-right extremism in America is much less mystical, and is very different from the old school fascism that existed in World War II. But I guess that is because American society is in many ways very special, and at the core of American society there is this idea that freedom and individualism are the greatest things that exist, while in Europe and in Russia especially, at the core of Russia, individualism is nowhere to be found. And yeah, that is why I think that in this interview, kind of Putin and Tucker Carlson were often just not really understanding each other and not giving answers. And when I say not giving answers, I'm referring to Putin not giving answers that the other side wanted to hear. I mean, when Tucker asked him, "Do you see God at work?" and Putin said, "Niet." Yeah, that surely wasn't what Tucker was expecting. But yes, all in all, an interesting interview that also shows that while they do share the same enemy, their ideologies, far-right American ideologies and far-right Russian ideologies, still remain to be very different. Okay, don't forget to like, share and subscribe for more videos like this.